New setup.
New setup.
For those of you watching the video, and those of you listening, we got this chaos going on.
Today's show is coming to you from the Bremerton Naval Shipyard.
Just barrel right through it.
Yeah. They're working on the roof here, so just bear with us, all right?
Welcome to the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast, a bi-weekly discussion of best practices, latest trends, and modern techniques for professional business communication, including advertising, marketing, digital channels, social media, public relations, and alternative options.
I lived through the shipyard. If I can do it, you can do it.
There you go.
Exactly. So today, I really want to dig down a little bit into one of the most important leadership skills, and that is delegation.
I agree completely. I'm very happy that we're having this discussion because I see it in professional life a lot. Missed opportunities by lack of delegation.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about some of the benefits here in just a little bit. First, I want to get your take on what delegation means.
Delegation is sharing in a responsibility and authority of the task necessary for a business to operate.
Absolutely. You nailed it. You're in my beads.
Nailed it. Did you say nail it because the roofers are doing that stuff above us?
Screwed it up. But anyway, no. Yeah. So yeah. The most important part about what you said was the authority.
Yes.
Responsibility and authority.
And that is where failure happens most often.
Right, absolutely. And I've been in many situations, especially through my military career, where I had the responsibility, but I did not have the authority.
Which then handicaps you, right? It handcuffs you essentially to being responsible, but not being able to do what's necessary to get it done.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. So I found this article, this blog post by a couple, Brett and Kate McKay, and we'll put that in the notes down below. Leadership, the importance of knowing how to delegate. And what I appreciated was this one quote: the ability to wisely and effectively delegate is a quality far more quiet than others, and yet one of the most crucial to a leader's success, one of the keys to achieving your goals. And I thought, absolutely.
I like that.
In my experience, absolutely, delegation. And we'll get into why it's so hard to delegate here in just a minute. But the other piece that they said, and I want you to listen to this, is a leader who insists on maintaining all control and authority is insecure.
That's the beginning of that conversation.
That's the beginning.
That's the very least of, but that's accurate.
Right.
That is accurate.
And they actually fail to meet the definition of leader.
100.
100%.
For sure. You can't call yourself a leader if you're not leading people, and you can't lead people if they are not participating in the process, and they can't do that if you can't delegate the ability to do so.
The other thing that they said was a leader does not do everything him or herself. Rather, she marshals the elements of time, resources, and people on the pathway to success.
Absolutely.
So there are some advantages to delegation. A
lot of advantages.
One might assume.
Certainly. The best leaders delegate, thus there are a lot of advantages. Wish I could have delegated this roofing job to another day, but
Seems
it is
like
what it is.
they were all around us, and then when we started they came right over top of us. Number one, it saves time.
Certainly.
It definitely saves time.
Efficiency is absolutely a byproduct of delegation.
You got to take time to think about your goals, not just the activities, and let your team members pick up the routine tasks.
Yes, execution.
Execution, absolutely. Number two, you can achieve more with delegation.
100% agree with that as well.
By not delegating, you put a heavy responsibility on yourself.
Yes, and you bottleneck everyone else.
Absolutely, and it's very possible to become overwhelmed. In fact, I would tell you in today's environment, that happens that.
Easily, for sure. And if a business is accelerating rapidly, if you're growing, if you're having success mode, which is the goal, the point, right?
Right.
That's when you're going to need the most delegation, and that bottleneck is the most detrimental to you.
Absolutely. So if you get the routine work off of your back, gives you time to think about your long-range goals, your strategies.
And that's the role of a leader.
That's correct.
To be thinking and planning and executing at a higher level while the delegated task of the day-to-day, the lower activities, the systemization happens at a different level.
Yeah, and some people will say, hey, but that's not going to relieve my stress. I'm going to be more stressful because I got to worry about these guys. No, if you delegate properly, it reduces your stress.
If you have systems in place, if you have processes, if you've hired the right people and you've managed them the right way, and you have, again, empowered them to do their job, not to follow a set of rules, the old plan versus protocol, right? But think as a human being, use their common sense, do the right thing, then they'll do the right thing. They'll now,
absolutely.
Not 100% of the time. Occasionally you have people who just don't work out. It's fine. You replace them and you move on, but you have to build a team, you have to delegate, and you have to follow the system if you want to have a successful business. You can have the same small, tiny, how it's always been business.
Yep.
If you want to put your thumb on every bit of the process.
Absolutely.
But if you begin and then embrace delegation, the growth potential comes right along with it.
Absolutely.
In parallel.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about some tips on how to delegate, just in case you were wondering. There are some things that you can put in a checklist. For those of you worried about burnout, delegation is the solution, is part of the solution anyway.
Burnout is a mental health aspect that a lot of people are focusing on now more than ever. And so, yes, if you don't want to burn out as the leader, and also your team doesn't burn out because they continue to do the same things with the same outcomes because they haven't been empowered, delegation helps in both aspects, helping both team members do better and less potential for burnout.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about that as a key advantage to the individuals here in a minute.
Yes, for sure.
It increases your value.
Yes.
What? How does that happen? Well,
yes, it does.
You increase your credibility as a leader, for one.
Yes.
Right?
It also expands your reach because delegation also should come with some teaching, some education, some enlightenment. And so you are putting pieces of you as the leader in the people you delegate to, not just simply giving them a set of instructions and moving them on. So you are expanding yourself, which does make you more valuable.
Well, when you delegate, you give your people a chance to demonstrate their responsibilities. And that may not be the same way you do it. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But that enhances respect and loyalty, two things that a leader absolutely wants to embrace.
And if you can't do those things, it goes back to the fact that you're not an actual leader.
Yeah, exactly right. And then, again, it offloads a lot of the routine stuff. It gives you a chance to think deeper, that increase the value of the activities because now they're more planned and they're more directed towards the goal.
There's a lot of conversation people have about why do CEOs and why do people in the C-suite expect to get paid so much money? Because they're not on the factory floor, like pulling the lever every day, like the working person who's doing the actual execution. That difference is the mindset and the experience and the skills and all of the things that go with big picture, with focusing on the future, with planning, with creating strategy, with putting the pieces in place in order to be successful as a full organization, as opposed to someone who is doing their specific job, which is playing a role across the spectrum.
Yeah.
A person who can understand the whole thing and then move every bit of it in the right direction. That it takes skill, it takes experience, it takes background, it takes education, it takes all of that. That's why the leader, whether it's the CEO, the owner, someone in the C-suite, even middle management, they bring that aspect to it. So free them up to do that.
Absolutely. There are lots of bureaucracies out there where you can go step 1, step 2, step 3 all day long.
Yeah.
Right?
With the slowest growth rate on the planet, if any growth rate at all.
Okay, so we said we'd talk a little bit about benefits, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start with team members. The first one is development. When you delegate, you teach your team members new skills. Yes. Now, you don't just say, here, go do this, create a formula for quantum physics without teaching them a little bit about quantum physics.
Right.
They get new skills. They get to develop themselves, get to develop their goals. And this makes them more versatile and a more important part of the team. In a leadership book, and Kouzes and Posner are the two authors. We talked
your
about
favorites,
this one, right. They say nobody wants to be a footnote. And that's, if you're delegating and you're giving them the opportunity to develop new skills, they are furthest thing from a footnote.
And you can see a future for yourself in the organization if you're taking on task delegated to you with the potential to do a good job, to bring your perspective, to make it yours, to have ownership of it. That creates the potential for you to move up or to expand and become from one place to the next to the top levels if you get to actively work in a delegated system. Without that, the almost hopelessness of I'll never get to get a promotion, get a raise, do better, maybe be the boss someday, can make people burn out or just simply quit.
Or just kind of tread water.
Just phone it in.
Yeah,
right?
just mail it in, phone it in.
Just because they show up every day and do the job as prescribed does not mean that they're doing a good job of being beneficial, because they're not really putting any real effort into it, and they're definitely not going to make it better. They're not going to provide ideas or insights or hey, we're doing 6 steps today. We could do it in 5 if we were to have additional tool or technology or something else. Those are things that make the organization better. That comes from empowered employees. And again, we continue to connect employment or empowerment to delegation.
Absolutely. Another benefit to the team members is job enhancement. Having interesting jobs and tasks makes the work fun in quotes, but it makes it more enjoyable.
Less work, and more participation activity.
And they're going to come up with new ideas and solutions to problems you haven't even thought of when you give them the chance to get their hands dirty.
A lot of my marketing background is in heavy manufacturing. It's in assembly lines, building big things, multiple stops, multiple people doing multiple things, multiple touches is what we used to refer to it as. And there's no better solution to the how do we put this nut on better? How do we make this bolt stronger? How do we make this not dent as easily as the guy or gal who actually install it every day?
Right.
They're the ones who touch it 100,000 times a year, and they'll tell you, if we just did this, or if I had this tool, or if we use a different material, then this won't happen. The CEO goes back to that they should be thinking about how to grow the company in the next 5 or 10 years. They are not tactically and tactilely in that if we change this bolt pattern, but the guy who puts those bolts on every day does know that.
And that's the keystone to quality circles.
Yes.
And all of those kinds of things is the people that are doing it every day have a much better.
No one knows better how to make that bolt work than the person who puts it on every day, who puts thousands on a day.
I thought that guy was right behind me.
They're gonna bolt that roof to our heads here in a minute.
Well, and giving people new tasks, trusting them to complete their job raises self-esteem, and I think that may be the biggest benefit of delegation.
And it goes back to the idea of buy-in, and employees who buy in and have esteem in their job. The old saying, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
Exactly.
Well, present people the ability to enjoy what they do by delegation and that second half, empowerment.
Yep. And being trusted to complete the job is a key part of self-esteem.
Everyone feels good about being trusted with a responsibility.
Right.
Even if it means more work, even if it's harder for them to do, but the trust factor, the adult reaction to being trusted is always positive.
Is always positive, absolutely. So let's look at what the benefits are for the team.
Okay.
And we've talked about the individual, right? Number one, members become more involved and committed. You get buy-in by delegating, right? Number two, you get more projects and activities undertaken.
Yes.
You can get more done.
They're looking to do more because they're being heard.
Right, exactly. And you're not bottlenecking things by trying to do it all yourself, right?
Yes.
That's the greatest leadership sin, I think, ever. I can do it myself.
And I see it a lot.
A greater chance that projects will be completed, so you're not just taking on more, but you're getting more done. Absolutely. Increased opportunities to develop your members' skills.
Yes.
Right? The troops.
Not just putting that single bolt on, but actually doing more within the job because they've been, empowered. How many times I'm going to say that today, but it's an absolutely 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely mutual.
Right.
Beneficial, but mutually, I forgot the word now too. Dependent.
Yes.
Mutually
You can't have one
dependent.
without the other.
Absolutely. Let's see. And at some point in time, you're going to need new people in leadership.
Yes.
from the floor manager on up.
Right. And people who start at the bottom, if you will, and move up, promote from within, bring that knowledge. It goes back to when the guy who was putting the bolt on every day, 10,000 times a day, who had a better idea on how to do it,
right.
When they get to move up into the next level, they bring that experience with them.
Now you've got qualified, experienced people to pull from.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And the people who work under them eventually, who come to replace them on the lower level, have respect immediately for them because I know what you're going through. I've been there.
Right, exactly.
I've done it.
Street cred.
I get it. I get it.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking out for you. I'm going to make your job even easier for you because I've been that person.
Exactly.
Yes, promotion from within is always a good idea.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see, that's the team. Okay. All right, so why do you think it's so hard to delegate?
It's giving up control.
Yeah, but that's a big part of it, absolutely. It does take an upfront effort.
Yes.
Right, because you have to analyze people's skills and make sure you got the right fit.
But the ROI is exponential on the upfront work it takes to identify and then delegate and empower.
Right.
When that happens, when they take on those responsibilities, the free up of the CEO, all of the benefits we've just described that come with it, is exponentially more beneficial than the potential that they don't do a good job.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And we mentioned this earlier. One of the reasons we find it so hard to delegate is that we usually think we can do it ourselves.
Sure.
And maybe that's the fun part. I want to get my hands dirty, right? Trust. Mm-hmm. Trust is a big part of delegation. If you don't trust your people, you're not going to give them that new responsibility, that new task. You're not going to help them grow.
And every business is only as good as the people involved within the business. Yep. And if you want to keep good people involved in your business, you have to trust them.
Yes, absolutely.
And they have to trust you as the leader.
And you said it earlier in this conversation, you have to hire the right people.
Yes.
You have to hire people that are hungry for that.
And you won't identify people who maybe need to be replaced or moved to a different situation if you don't allow them to take on tasks and responsibilities, be trusted with them, and they will either rise to the occasion or they'll fail. As the leader, you can decide to either coach them up or move on to a better relationship.
Right.
Put them in a situation that works better for them, and put someone who works better for you in that situation.
In that position.
And that's a win-win.
Absolutely. So which would you rather do? Drive the car or sit in the passenger seat?
Well, I'm typically a driver.
Yes, I am too.
And I'm more of in a leadership role, but there are times I do enjoy being in the passenger seat.
Most of the time, my wife drives. I'm in the passenger seat. That's delegating because I tend to get a little angry in traffic.
I feel you there. I've got those same tendencies as well. But I've also found myself in situations going from Oklahoma City to Tulsa, about an hour and a half journey, right? There have been a few times where I have had to ask someone else to drive so that I can work.
You can work, absolutely.
So that I can keep that hour and a half of productivity.
You can be more productive.
That's right. So delegating the driving to someone else, even though I prefer to drive, is often beneficial.
Absolutely.
And I've done that in Ubers too. There are times I've left my vehicle somewhere and simply taking an Uber to a meeting,
so that
Lyft or an Uber or something else,
right.
so that I can finish the work on the way.
Absolutely. A big reason people don't delegate is that they're risk averse.
Yes.
And there's a whole bunch of that going on now,
yes.
And it just makes me crazy.
Reward comes from risk.
Right.
You cannot operate a business with zero risk. There's no way you'll ever be profitable or successful without taking risk. Now, it doesn't mean go crazy and lose your damn mind.
Right.
It takes calculated risk, and this is how you do it through the delegation process, is how you take calculated risk. But the idea that you don't need to take risk is a 100% loser idea.
Yeah.
You must do it.
Yeah.
Just do it as smart as you possibly can.
Exactly. And, it's called risk for a reason.
That's right. But reward comes from risk. You will never gain without it.
Absolutely. Here's a couple of guidelines for delegation. First of all, you got to put the right people in the right place.
Certainly.
And that's going to take an investment. You're going to need to sit down. You're going to need to review their history, their experience. You got to interview them and place them carefully, right?
You also need to have inspected and reviewed the job description.
Yes.
Where are you putting them?
Right.
Is that the right role? Have you explained it correctly? And then is it the right combination of their skills, talents, etc.? It goes both ways.
Absolutely, and it's got to be a good fit for the worker too.
Yes.
Can they grow from this position, or is it just a lateral? If it's just a lateral,
and hopefully bonus if they bring new perspectives and new ideas to it, like we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. Second thing you need to do is explain why.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, in the military, there isn't a lot of room for why.
Not as much explaining why in the military, but in private business,
right.
There's definitely needs to have conversations about the why.
But even in the military, if you're not in a combat situation, and you can explain why you're doing something.
Yes.
You can reduce rumors. You can motivate them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal, to engage in
like
a new
all good
activity.
communication should.
Absolutely.
Right.
And delegate those segments that make sense, okay?
Yes.
I don't know that as the CEO of a company, I would necessarily delegate the strategy of my company.
No.
I would involve other people in helping me build that, but
Yes.
that's mine. That's my lane,
Yes.
right?
That's the expectation of the CEO or leadership. There are other tasks that can be delegated, and there's often an economic scale as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are duties that are worth $10 an hour. There are duties worth $20 an hour. There are duties worth $200 an hour because of the skill set experience that comes along with it. So don't have your $200 employees doing $10 tasks.
Right.
And don't expect your $10 an hour employees, no disrespect to them, but they don't have the experience, the skills, etc., to do the tasks that they're not ready for.
Right, absolutely.
Because that creates nothing but frustration and potential for failure.
Well, you kind of lead turned into this one, but it's, and it's not pieces, parts, or bits of tasks. Yeah. Give them whole chunks. If you can give them the whole thing, that's even better.
Yes. Allow them to own it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It goes back to pride, and it goes back to trust.
Pieces, parts are going to make it feel like you're micromanaging people. Yeah. Delegation is about growing people.
It's only partial delegation if you're only giving them pieces.
That's exactly right.
It's full delegation if you give them the whole task and then allow them to have ownership of it and to put themselves into it.
A huge part then of delegation is providing them the big picture. Yes. Where does this fit into the overall
That's giving them
company?
The why.
Absolutely. Discuss. When did that become a dirty word, right?
Right.
Sit down with the players and talk about the task at hand and some ideas, mutually set some goals.
Do not stop at that's how we've always done it. Always a red flag.
That's one of the reasons you don't delegate.
So discussion allows you to move past because that's how we've always done it and have the discussion should be the best way to do it.
Right.
And that comes from both sides. It comes from that experience of doing other tasks and moving up through the organization and the leadership experience at the same time. You combine them, the potential to have the right answer is very high.
Well, and then they have a voice in the decision-making process, which is really that's ownership.
It is, and then it also allows, because no one necessarily owns or is put into the corner of how it has to be done, the adjustments necessary, because business is all about adjusting. Yep. The adjustments necessary can happen most of the time without even asking, because you have empowered them. One more time with that word to discuss how it should be done, and then as the adjustments are necessary, it's not about who told you to, it is because we said we were going to do it the right way.
Right, exactly. So, and then clearly define the responsibilities. You got to set the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
This is what you're responsible for. This is the leading edge of your authority.
If you set an expectation, they have the potential to meet that expectation, which is be successful.
Right.
If you don't set expectations, then number one, no one can ever claim to be like I've been successful in my role, and then number two, they wander off in all kinds of different directions that aren't necessarily beneficial.
Well, the scariest part for a lot of people in delegation is that people are going to run amok with the new power.
Right.
Well,
you're still the boss. You're still available to reel them back in.
But I think it's really important at the outset to tell people, where they can freely function.
Yeah.
All right. The Army calls it commander's intent.
You don't have to give them all space, just enough space.
As long as you understand what the strategy is, what the company's mission and values are, then you have to trust your people to make decisions that will lead in that direction.
Yes.
But you have to tell them where they can play free and where they need.
You have to take that risk.
You do have to take that risk, absolutely.
But then you have to define it for them.
And then you got to find out when you'll know when they need help. Because they are going to need help.
Yes.
Right?
You cannot expect someone to go from 0 to 1,000. You have to be part of the process.
Absolutely. You got to first be told when and how you can help. I mean, you have to let them know, hey, I'm here. Yeah. I'm investing in you. I'm happy to assist.
I want to.
But you got to tell me.
Yes.
Right? I used to tell my students the most courageous thing a young professional can do is raise their hand and say, I'm overwhelmed. I need help. Mm-hmm. Right? So same in the business world. Sometimes it's very difficult. You feel like your job's going to be threatened or you'll be looked down upon if I don't know what I'm doing. Right. I got to raise my hand. No, that's the most courageous thing you can do.
And in fact, let's talk right to those individuals right now. If you're early in your career, maybe you had a career change, you're young in the business you're in the job responsibility, and you think to yourself, I could never admit that I don't understand what's going on, or I'm overwhelmed, or this is over my head. And as a leader who delegates and manages teams and has been in big systems, as someone who is an employer, employs people, works with employers at the C-suite level, we're here to tell you right now, we want you to ask for help.
With this caveat, don't ask a question that you can find out the answer to on your own, i.e. Google.
Yes, not simple things, not small things, but when you're designated or empowered to do something,
right,
and if you don't fully understand it, ask smart questions, especially at the beginning.
Right.
And that engagement, the ability to be humble in your process and ask so that you get it right. As your boss, I'm super happy you've done it.
Absolutely.
I'm not thinking that person is not very bright. I'm thinking that person is very bright to ask the question now, as opposed to muddle around, waste everyone's time and money, etc., and then say, well, I just didn't know. If you don't know, make it known, ask who you need to ask, and then get to work.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
We're telling you that, folks. We are employers. We are people who manage teams. We work with these people all the time. They would much rather answer some questions early, right, and make sure you're on the right path than find out later that you didn't understand the assignment.
Here's a big one, and this is just about like the word spin for me.
Ooh.
Don't micromanage.
I'm with you on the level of dislike for that word.
Absolutely. Don't suck the egg this way, suck the egg this way. Absolutely.
No one appreciates it.
Most responsible people do not appreciate.
And that is the quickest way to kill trust.
Absolutely.
And buy-in and everything else beneficial we've discussed thus far. You can slaughter that in 30 seconds of micromanagement.
Absolutely. Let them go. Let them do their job.
Put people in their place, point them in the right direction, let them go. Make the adjustments necessary, because business is all about making adjustments. So there will be adjustments. It's fine. You can make them when they're needed.
Right.
It's not something where they're, whatever they do, you're stuck with for the rest of time.
Right.
So let them get to work and then make the adjustments necessary.
Yeah. And remember, delegating doesn't mean eliminating the work. It just means kind of changing it.
Right.
Right. As you delegate opportunity, then you get that multiplier effect. So don't micromanage. And follow-up is important. Check periodically. Ask questions. How's it going? Yeah. Do you need any help?
Engagement.
I used to ask, do you have everything that you need to be successful?
A great question. I like that.
And they'll let you know how they're progressing. Yeah. Usually. Yeah. I mean, especially if you've built that atmosphere of trust.
That's right. If they understand that, again, going back to asking questions because they want to get the task right, then the process of actually asking questions is beneficial. They will ask those questions. That comes from engagement. That comes from you checking in with them and trying to provide. You want everyone in your organization to be successful. Thus, the whole organization is more successful.
But be careful. There's a really fine line between following up and micromanagement.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
If your check-in involves going, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? That's micromanagement.
That's checklist operation, which is not beneficial. Also, at the same time, too, if you give someone a time period, a day, a week, a month, a quarter to do something, Not saying you ignore them till the day it's due,
right.
but if they have a week,
right.
don't come back 5 minutes later. It has to be relative to the time period.
That's absolutely right.
If they have a week, you might check in a day or two, but you don't check in within an hour. If they have the whole quarter, you don't need to check in the first week, but you can't wait to the end of the quarter.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
It's all relative and balanced.
Right. And you got to give them time to, kind of sink their teeth into it too.
And if things are actually going properly, they're bringing you some feedback, whether it's small successes or questions or the adjustments necessary.
Right. And as a good leader, never blow that stuff off.
No, always pay attention.
Own it.
100%.
Absolutely, take it aboard. And then the last thing is evaluate.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we talk about evaluation and measurement in strategic planning.
Yep.
It's equally important in terms of delegation to see how your folks are doing. See how that particular matchup is helping the organization.
And again, it goes
forward.
both ways. How are they doing with the task assigned to them? And have you assigned the right task? And are those the tasks necessary to move the business forward?
Yeah.
And all of those things can be adjusted at any time because it's all about continual adjustment.
Absolutely. And it's really important that one of the most important roles for leaders is growing your people.
Yes.
And so evaluation is part of that, using the appropriate feedback mechanisms to let them know you're doing good here. I just got back from a certification review for education and public relations, and the way that we outbriefed it was, okay, here are your opportunities, right,
yes.
for problems.
Yes.
They're not problems, they're opportunities.
Always.
Right? Positives and negatives. So use the appropriate feedback. Your members are your greatest assets.
Uh-huh.
And so if you're not delegating and pushing them and helping them learn and helping them grow, you are wasting resources, my friend.
And all of that's based on communication.
Absolutely. So there you go.
I like it.
A little walk around the park with delegation.
The key takeaway today, though, folks, is we see great businesses and great business leaders all the time create bottlenecks and create problems in the organization by lack of delegation.
Yep.
You're probably not delegating enough.
Right. Personal anecdote. I was in charge of public affairs for the U.S.'s strategic forces.
Right.
And I think I had 7 or 8 people working underneath me. And early on, I told them I trusted them. I gave them, I tried to follow my own advice, right? But at one point in time, I noticed that they were calling me for every little thing. And I went, I'm not doing my job very well.
Right. You've not empowered them enough.
I haven't delegated enough. I haven't empowered them enough.
Right.
As soon as I learned that lesson, things went hummingly.
Now, some leaders might think to themselves, my team is being lazy, or they're not engaging enough. They're not trying hard enough.
Right.
A good leader understands that need for questioning comes from the fact that you have provided them the right tools in the right scenario.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly right. So I didn't criticize them.
Good job.
I criticized me.
Good job.
I knew that's where that was coming from.
Your head was in the right place.
Well, sometimes people tell me where my head is, and it's not pleasant, but there you go. Anyway, that's it. Delegate. The hardest leadership skill, but maybe one of the most critical. Until next time, ciao.
Good luck.
This has been the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. Thanks for listening.